The mailman doesn't deliver on a Sunday.
If you don't like that, you don't like NBA basketball.
Anthony for three. Bang! J.R. Smith! We just saw men fly. LeBron James with no regard for human life.
Cleveland! This is for you!
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Coast to Coast. I am Ronan Gaine. Joining me as always, Chris Nambu. Back to talk some NBA hoops with you. There's a lot going on this week. Kevin Durant out injured again from a completely innocuous fall in warm-ups. How standard is that? Morant is going to remain away from the Grizzlies. The Dylan Brooks, Draymond Green spat. How do the Grizzlies go forward from here? 76ers continue on their great run. Another win last night, but is it all real, or will things start to crumble as we get close to the postseason? We'll also do a little highlight spot of a young man named Jalen WIlliams out in OKC who started to make a little run for himself. But before we get into it, just want to thank you all for listening, making Coast to Coast your number one listen for your NBA news, your podcast. And remember, you like what you're hearing, like, subscribe, drop us that comment. You want to see something discussed, let us know. We will respond and we will keep producing that content. But you need to show us that love as well with the likes and subscriptions, because that's what we're all about here. But let's get right into the NBA stuff, the real stuff you came here to listen to. Kevin Durant, another injury just after coming back from a major one. This feels a little bit more minor, but it's just starting to feel like the injuries are just going to keep on plaguing this man until for the rest of his career.
Yep. So if anyone saw it, innocuous is definitely, that's a great word for it. You're really coming in with the vocab every single episode. Come to Coast if you need to expand your vocabulary. Ronan's got you covered. Last time we had, what was it? A dank squid.
Damp squid. Come on now.
A damp squid. So I would say this is definitely this second half of the season that's supposed to be this great open party for Kevin Durant to get used to the Suns. That's been a bit of a damp squid. But does that apply? Did I use that right?
Yeah.
Kind of. I'm working it in. But with that injury, it's really concerning. And I'm not gonna put my medicine hat on here, but just to see him get injured off of a layup line, that suggests to me that, there's a little bit of instability there. If he's spraining his ankle, a high ankle sprain? I want to say a high ankle sprain off of a no contact, just not even like going up against defense, like a sprain like that. That's concerning to me. That suggests to me that there's, that wasn't a complete rehab. Maybe he shouldn't have been out there on time. But one thing I will say is that the Suns organization is very well known for having very good medical staff and really taking care of their players' health. So, if anyone's he's going to thrive somewhere, you'd have to hope it's with Phoenix, given their track record.
Yeah, no, that's for sure. It's just every time he gets these little niggles and all, you just start to think more about so many players that this has happened to. They get they're so fine throughout first 5, 6, 7 years of their career. They get that one bad injury, and then all the little niggles just start to happen that bit more. We've seen it with LeBron James over the last few years. He has that bad injury the first year in LA, and since then the little niggles and all have kept on creeping up at important times for himself and for the Lakers. And now we're starting to see it with KD as well. Obviously he tore his Achilles. He misses the entire 19-20 season. Next year, he plays 35 games. 21-22, he plays 55 games. So far this year, he's played 42 games. I guess there's a chance that he maybe plays could it only be maybe 5 more? That'll be less than 50 games played this year between Brooklyn and Phoenix. And that's it's a bit concerning. You hope that doesn't plague the remaining years of his career, and the Suns really better hope that it doesn't continue to happen, because they gave up a lot to get him in. They gave up everything to win that chip. But unless he is at full tilt, they are not winning the chip, especially not this year. I don't think I could back them to win a series, but if KD is not at full tilt, they're not going all the way.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. if we're just talking right now about where the Suns are going to stand, just the last thing on KD's injuries, he has a 4-year contract, and he's going to be 38 by the end of it, and the Suns are going to be stuck with that. And this is way too early to be talking about like if long term it's going to be worth it, because it's just an ankle sprain, but it is worth talking about his track record. And I think it's also worth mentioning that the Nets were just, he was averaging, I don't want to speculate because I haven't looked up I can take a look in a second, but he just had way too many heavy minute games. He had way too many times where he's out there, and it's not just like on the offensive end, on both ends of the floor, like he is really pushing his all. And I think that with the Suns organization, with the role players they have on that team, with the playmakers they have on that team, there's not going to be the same physical burden that he's going to have. And hopefully that's going to prolong his career. That's a big thing. He's not going to have to carry the same way that he used to. But for the Suns right now, this is a concern. They've definitely gotten back into form after a really abysmal end of the year last year to close out 2022. And they've gotten back up in the top 5 in the West. Obviously, all these positions are super, super tenuous. Like, you don't know, you lose 3 games, you might be out of the playoffs. It's insane. Mm-hmm. But look who's coming to the rescue. There are role players on this team that have stepped up in the absence of Cam Johnson, Mikal Bridges, and obviously Kevin Durant right now. I don't know if we got to mention it before. Josh Okogie.
Yeah,
I texted you about. I think we were talking basketball. And this is such classic of our basketball conversations where you're like texting me about like Anthony Davis, and I can't be bothered to watch the Lakers on a night where Josh Okogie's got like 25 points, and I'm freaking out over that. But he's really had an opportunity here with the Suns. He was a fantastic defender for the Timberwolves. Never got really a chance given his offensive struggles, and right now he's averaging 15.4 points, and on these splits 46, 40, and 80. I'm not going to go crazy over a 10-game stretch, but Josh Okogie, a guy who I think the league knows, great defender, amazing in the open court. He's such a hustle player. A guy like that for the Suns, he's really coming in the clutch, that they just have a guy to pull off the bench without Kevin Durant, and he's going to contribute in a meaningful way. Look at Ross. He had 27 points in his last game. Lee is still playing well. Jerry Craig is only up. They have guys to last them throughout the regular season to keep their position. And I agree with you. I think they're going to last the series without Kevin Durant. And I think that takes a lot of pressure off for them to come early. Like they should be fine up until the semi-conference finals. And Kevin Durant's a guy that he doesn't, the chemistry will get there, but I think he'll be fine just slotting in and playing with this team.
Yeah. And obviously the way Devin Booker's been playing over the last few games, after they won 4 straight in those 4 wins, 37, 35, 36, and 44. Devin Booker is more than capable of keeping this team afloat and to keep them right there on the coattails of the likes of the top 4 in the Western Conference, and then they could end up with a favorable matchup in the first round, which you think they could get through 2 even without KD, if it came to that, and they wanted to give KD that little bit more rest or something like that. Hopefully he'll be fine come playoff time anyway. But they're going to be capable of without Kevin Durant. Obviously they had Bridges and Cam Johnson. They got to the finals. They went 7 games with Dallas last year. They're a capable team. You'll see a bit more of Ayton now that without KD in the lineup, with him and CP3 and him and Booker running pick and rolls, they can still destroy teams, which is going to still be positive for them. So it's kind of almost like they've made the move. Now this has happened, and it's just kind of a wait and see how it goes. I think they've done enough now to make sure to think they're going to be in the playoffs. They're not going to have to worry about the play in, as tough as it is in the Western Conference. It's just kind of a question of what level is Durant at when we get to playoff time.
Yeah. I honestly, I'd go so far as to say, like, this wouldn't be ideal. Like, you don't want to not have any playing time with Durant. But I go so far to say you have Booker playing this level. We've seen Ayton really elevate his game in the playoffs. We've seen Chris Paul, have his moments in the playoffs still. And those three guys, and given what I just mentioned, those role players that they have in this team, I think that they could continue to compete at a high level throughout the playoffs to the point where if Kevin Durant comes back game one of the finals, I think they'd be fine. I really think at the level that they're playing right now that it would be a tough journey without Kevin Durant. But I think that, if you're going to expect Ayton to be the kind of player that you want him to be, if you're going to continue to expect greatness from Devin Booker, like Devin Booker to be the guy that he wants to be, a top 10 type player, I mean, this is another challenge for him, especially in a moment where you just added Kevin Durant and a lot's going to be said about your legacy that you had to add a Kevin Durant to win a championship. This is going to be a little bit of nuance that he had to carry them through the playoffs without Kevin Durant. Maybe that's a point to his legacy. So, but at the end of the day, I think this is a great moment for the Suns team, for these role players, for these guys to continue to, it's not just a Devin Booker team. Like this Phoenix Suns, since Chris Paul has gotten there, it's not just been about Devin Booker, Chris Paul. Like this team is an organization, the coaching job that they've had there. They're a fantastically coached team. They're really good defensively, and I think that'll keep them through the playoffs.
Yeah, I think that's fair. But I'll definitely getting a little bit ahead of ourselves. Don't need to go into it too much of talking playoffs. But reining back in, we'll stay in the West. Obviously, a lot's gone on with the Grizzlies of late. Ja Morant, his off-court issues, that Instagram Live story of him presenting a gun. Obviously, not going to be charged, but he's going to be staying away from the team for at least another couple of games, I think. To hear the stuff come out after the Instagram Live post went out after he was originally suspended. Apparently there was a team meeting where Steven Adams, players only meeting, Steven Adams basically stepping up, saying that they all had to behave better, but everyone kind of knew it was being directed at Ja Morant. Got to behave better when they're on the road. They got to be acting that bit more professionally. Morant is obviously in a space where he's struggling a little bit outside of the basketball world. What's really important now is that he gets the right people in around him to make sure that this is just a minor blip and he gets on a better path now for both himself just in life and for himself and the Grizzlies as an organization, as a team.
Yeah, it's I guess the only thing I'll say on it, because so much has been said, like, across, the media, across former players, current players, everything. Like, I think the one thing I think of the most is what we see from Ja, interacting with fans, the things we've seen him do in the community. And I think he's clearly demonstrated that as a person, like he's got a big heart, and like this is clearly a diversion of his character. Like on a lot of levels, it's confusing, and you just leave it at that. We don't really know as fans, as people who look up to players. A lot of kids who look up to players. I think it is a big deal. I think a lot of people just want to downplay and be like, whatever. I will say that it's a big deal that you have guys who are looked up to, and it's difficult to see that they're human. When we put people on pedestals and we expect the best out of people, we expect people to be perfect. We expect them to always be like this non-human, like perfect person, and it's just not true. And he's a young man, and like there's so many things that people have to learn through life. And yeah, hopefully it works out, because I mean this is supposed to be a moment of a great story, because I think the Grizzlies and Ja and like how they've come up and how they've competed in this league, and just on the sports side, I think this is definitely a moment where you want him to be locked in. You want this team to be locked in, and it's bigger than basketball, of course. It's bigger than that. This is a life thing. This is this is more than just what happens on the court. But maybe what we do want to talk about on the court, though, is how the Grizzlies have been doing. I mean, they've kind of bounced back a little bit here, even without Ja. And I do want to ask the question: are the Grizzlies and the Warriors a rivalry? Because it's been asked And I think it's ridiculous that it's been asked personally, but I've been surprised at the amount of people that have said no. And what do you think?
It's kind of a weird one. It's very much a situation where like the Grizzlies are talking their talk. They're trying to make it so that it's a rivalry with the Warriors, basically saying like, who the hell are who even are the Memphis Grizzlies? Like we don't even consider them anything because they've been nowhere while we've been dominating, that sort of way. But the chippiness that's there, the battles that they've had over the last year or two, it is starting to become a rivalry. It's right on the cusp of it. I think we maybe need to see another playoff series to really say it's a dead heat rivalry. I mean, a lot of it's just Dylan Brooks and Draymond Green chatting shit about each other on their various podcasts and different things like that. But yeah, there's definitely there's a bit of beef between the two of them, and it's always fun to see that with two teams in the same conference.
Yeah. Are we in the meta podcast verse now? Like we're podcasting, talking about podcasters on a podcast, like whatever. But it is entertaining. Like, and I really think it's funny the downplaying that Draymond Green did, because like, listen, like Michael Jordan and the Detroit Pistons, and then I'm in no way likening these two teams in that situation. I'm just likening the situation that was a rivalry, and what, just because Michael Jordan hadn't made it past them yet and hadn't won a championship yet, that was not a rivalry. That's not how that works. I mean, I think there's so many more things that go into it. I mean, there's the recent history of the Grizzlies booting out the Warriors in the play-in. There's a recent history of them in a deep playoff battle where if Ja Morant's not hurt, there's a lot of shoulda, coulda, woulda, what ifs, but that's a pretty big factor to why the Grizzlies did not advance past the Warriors, and they had some really good games against them. And I think as anyone who watches games between the Warriors and Grizzlies sees the elevation of play between both teams. And that's not the Grizzlies like some like crappy team getting up to play the Warriors. That's two teams who like know each other well and compete well and have a little bit of bad blood against each other. And as a fan, I think that's absolutely a rivalry, because you don't get to see that very often. You don't get to see two teams that really have anything to say. And I think it's funny that it's Dylan Brooks and Draymond Green. Draymond Green, obviously, very outspoken guy, very successful basketball player, hands down. But we don't see like the best players on teams really be the guys to talk trash anymore. There's not your Charles Barkleys, your Michael Jordans, like the guys who are leading the teams really saying anything. It's guys like Dylan Brooks. Yeah. I mean, and I think that's why I like it. Like there's a certain like cockiness that people don't like about the Grizzlies, but you don't have guys that really bristle the feathers of other teams. Like teams are very cordial with each other. It's like all about professional competition, which is nice and all, but it's good to see like two teams really have a little bit of bad blood against each other. I mean, that's good for the product. That's good to watch. It's good to see like a fight. I think it's a rivalry. I think that these two teams, if they meet in the playoffs, it's not going to be, like big brother, little brother. These teams are very uniquely matched. In their game without Ja Morant. I mean, Draymond tried to play down the loss to the Grizzlies, where the Grizzlies scored almost 50 points in the first quarter and outscored them by 1 million in the paint. I mean, they just looked like they had no rim protection, and supposedly that's where Draymond's running the defense. But there's clearly a lot of interesting matchups between these two teams, and this is something that we shouldn't downplay. We should celebrate this kind of matchup.
No, yeah, for sure. I mean, it's great to have that sort of chippiness back. We've kind of been waiting for it a while. There hasn't been that almost kind of heel team that are both good enough to back up their trash talk and willing to do that trash talk against the obviously the defending champions. And just a question of now the Grizzlies getting back on the right track. Obviously, it's tough to do while Morant is away from the team and they're still without Steven Adams, but they're now 39-26. They're still third in the Western Conference, but 5-5 over their last 10 games. They're just on that trajectory at the moment where it's kind of, they feel like it, win a game, lose a game. There's no real progress either way happening. And hopefully Morant comes back the next week or two and the team can get back on the right track and they could be in good winning form getting towards the playoffs. Because that's the next thing to kind of quieten all this down. Ja gets back on his feet, he gets back playing like the superstar that he is on the court, and the Grizzlies get back to winning consistently.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to them being healthy. I'm looking forward to that because I've been waiting for the Grizzlies, man. I've been waiting for them to have their moment to be in the finals. I think that they should have been one of the teams to beat. Obviously, they had a little bit of a humbling moment, I think, this season. They had a bit of a stretch where after all this trash talk, after all this like hate they're getting on the internet, they go on this really tough stretch. But given that stretch, given kind of how like a bit of a change of the discussion around this team, they're not just like this young team where there's expectations. And given what's happened with Ja, I think maybe there's a wake up call. There's a wake up call this season that there will definitely be a change, whether that's for better or for worse. There's definitely going to be a change at the end of the season. This isn't just some like fun loving team that's a upstart. Like there's expectations, and there's not just on the court but off the court for their biggest player and for all these players on this team. But when we get to talk about my boy, is it about that time?
No. Well, we can finish off. One last point on the Grizzlies. I just want to say, Jaren Jackson Jr., Defensive Player of the Year.
Oh, he's also my boy. I would say yeah. I would say yeah. It would be really tough to say who else at this point. Mm-hmm. I mean, how prolific he's been, defending the paint. Is he the best shot blocker in the league? I think the answer is yes. He's the best shot blocker in the league. The Grizzlies, one of the best defensive teams in the league. They are. I mean, we got to argue about like how good are they in the drop and the switch, and I think Jaren Jackson Jr. is great at both of those. I mean, his foul trouble is down. There's not a lot of arguments against like what holes he has as a defender. So it's not like he's just like kind of a niche defender like Gobert, who was so good at what he did specifically that he even won three times in a row. I'm forgetting now. I'm forgetting my Gobert history after this season.
Was it two times? It
was 2 times.
3 times total or something like that?
3 times total, two times in a row. But I mean, Jaren Jackson Jr. I think is better perimeter defender than him as well. Is proven to be just as good as a shot blocker this season. And I don't know how you argue anyone else deserves it more than he does at this point.
Yeah, and it's a great to see from him. I think obviously he started the season out injured, and then since he's come back, he's really taken that step up. And I think a lot of people were worried when he was coming into the season, coming off that injury. It's kind of how long it was going to take him to get back to the level that was expected of him and that he wanted to be at. But he's kind of really jumped right back into it straight off the bat, which is a big plus for himself and a big plus for the Grizzlies nation. And hopefully they can now get back on track as we head towards the rest of the season. But before we talk 76ers, before we head out east, we'll talk about your boy Jalen WIlliams and the OKC Thunder, a rookie who has stepped up of late and really looked like a talented player.
Yeah, you see that's the tough part about him. Like we're not sure like where to put him in terms of like a tier. Like he's not jumping off the page like, you know, an Anthony Edwards in his rookie year. But what he's doing is so complete. Like I think you need to look closely at a player like this to realize how really good he is. Like very underrated. And I think it's important to talk about him right now as well, because, you know, we don't get to always say that we're right about things. I think we're right like 50% of the time. And this is a perfect example because I'm looking back at our preview of the draft, and my 2 favorite sleepers who I thought were going to be really good contributors on the team was Jalen WIlliams and EJ Liddell, who I have no idea where he is right now. But that's tough for EJ. He should have been there. But Jalen WIlliams, I mean, at the beginning of the season, I mean, look what he was doing. He had a lot of really good moments, like 10 point, 11 assists, double-doubles, really filling out the stat sheet. He had a 16.7 assist, 6 rebound game against Memphis. And then now in 2023, like he's really put it together. I mean, he is scoring in isolation. They're putting him in pick and roll, and he's really showing the full package. Like he can really do everything. At the body size that he is, like he's bigger than Paul George. He's And I'm scared to say stuff like that anymore after our Cam Reddish debacle, me thinking he's going to be the next Paul George. But I swear, like Jalen Williams really shows the full package and the IQ. And on a team like the Thunder, it really makes you think about why they were quiet at the trade deadline. Thinking maybe Shai is ready for a team that's competitive, start to get something around him. I mean, Jalen Williams might be the missing link. That doesn't sound like a hot take, but it is a hot take for a team that has been dying for a star, or a second star, like a true engine in this team. I think Shai's answered that. And I think the next question is like, well, he needs some co-stars around him. I think Jalen Williams has the real potential to be one of the guys around Shai if they're competing for a championship one day. What he's shown, I don't feel crazy saying that, because you look at the tape, he literally does everything. He can defend in the paint. He can defend the perimeter. He's a good screener. He's a great shooter. He's probably one of the best shooters in 2023 above the break. And that's a tough shot. A lot of players, especially young wing players, cannot be making that shot. Great cutter, great feel. Like, there's not enough you can say about this guy. And for him to do this in his rookie year, I think that the Thunder organization feel pretty confident that they found a missing piece to this team, and you just bring in Chet next season and they're ready to go. I think if I'm a Thunder fan, if I'm in the Thunder organization, if you're watching really closely what this guy is doing, I think they feel pretty confident about that just because of how he's grown.
Yeah, and his last 4 games, obviously, he's come in 2 wins and 2 losses. He's done a little bit of everything on both ends of the floor. I mean, 27, 5 boards, 8 assists, 2 steals, and 24 points, 4 boards, 7 assists, 2 steals, 26, 4, 4. And then the last game, the win over Utah, 32 points, 5 boards, 5 assists, 2 steals, 2 blocks. Very athletic, very talented on both ends of the floor, and playing alongside Shai, it's a nice compliment to him. And then you get him playing off a big man like Chet Holmgren, like what we are expecting Chet Holmgren to be in this NBA. It really feels like the OKC Thunder are really building this team up in absolutely the right way. It's something you never, in this modern age, it's something you almost don't believe can happen, building up through the draft and through almost a minor trade, and what it felt like you were trading away your main piece to get that ultimately brought Shai Gilgeous-Alexander to the team. They're building it up in this natural way, and the way it's coming together, it's, if you're an OKC Thunder fan, I mean, you've got to be absolutely loving this.
Yeah, and I'll go off the deep end right now. Like, I think that you're looking at the makeup of this team right now. And this is a big if, like, if they're going to make some solid veteran acquisitions this offseason, and Chet Holmgren is healthy and he fits in the way that you think he does, I think the key young players they have on this team are so gifted intellectually. Their basketball IQ is just off the charts, and you see it from the passing. You see how good of a passer Giddey is, how good of a passer Williams is. And we already know we've already talked ad nauseum how great Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is. These 3 guys, plus you add Chet, who's also proven in college to be a great passer. We'll see how his shooting pans out. But your 4 main young guys are unselfish, very smart, can space the floor, can really do everything. And you just need to, kind of filter out some of these other young guys on the team who haven't really made it there yet. And in one offseason, overnight, this could be one of those teams that next season feels like they come out of nowhere and they're in the playoffs. Like, they go from being a lottery team to the playoffs, and that takes sometimes like a big move to get to that point. But I think they just need to add some veteran talent around this team, just get some guys who are a little more consistent defensively. Not even to talk about Lou Dort, who I think is, super underrated defender still. This team they're getting ready. While everyone's talking about the playoffs, maybe they make the playoffs, maybe they don't, it doesn't really matter. I think it's exciting to think about next season with the growth and free agency that'll come up in the summer. This team, I think they're a lot closer than we think they are.
Yeah, I mean, the right veteran additions to this team could really be huge. A level of growth in year 2 from Jalen WIlliams. Another year of growth for Shai, for Josh Giddey, Chet coming in and doing what he can do. It's going to be that could easily be a serious team capable of reaching the playoffs next year so quickly after thinking they were a team completely in a rebuild. Who knows what's going to happen? It's great to see. So we'll make you a final call on it, though. Do you think they're going to snatch a playing spot this year, or do you think they'll just miss out?
It's tough. It's gonna come down to the wire. I mean, it's like you're flipping a coin on all these teams. It's gonna be them. It's gonna be the Pelicans. It's gonna be the Lakers. Like who knows? If they make it in, though, I think that the question is, could they be a team that could upset? Do they have enough to be lucky in a 7-game series to maybe make a big upset? And I say maybe. I say maybe. Cool, because here's my argument for it. Probably not, but like I don't think they're a team that, you know, gets in to the playoffs from the plan and then just gets torched. I think they're going to look a little bit like a Pelicans team who really takes it to a Suns type team, and the Suns are like, whoa, we need to take this seriously, because Shai is not afraid of the moment. Like Shai is going to go toe to toe with whatever star he's facing, whatever defense you put on him, and he's gonna be a 30-point per game guy in a 7-game series. And then it's just a matter of can a guy like Jalen WIlliams step up to the moment? Can a guy like Josh Giddey step up to the moment? Can Lou Dort be a great, like there's a ton of X factors. You don't know who's going to show up on your bench, and it makes it tough to argue that they would. But I think they have a star, and they have young guys who maybe they just find themselves, and they're a team that I wouldn't want to face. I'd rather face a known quantity. I'd rather face the Pelicans than face the Thunder. I think you know what's going to happen with the Pelicans.
Yeah, I think yeah, that's a fair argument. I think the way I'd look at it this year, I think they're a team you really don't want to face if you're in the play-in, but over a 7-game stretch, I think any of the teams that are already guaranteed to play out, any of the top 6 teams, I think they will, without taking the team lightly, I think they'd be confident of having enough to get by in 6 games. But that's again getting ahead of ourselves a bit. Not really something that's important for OKC. They're not really too worried. I don't think if they get into the play-ins, if they get into the playoffs, it's a great year with their top draft pick injured. If not, they rebuild, they regroup, and look to an even better year next year. So that's the way they can't lose for the end of the season in OKC, I think. But let's flip it over to the Eastern Conference. Philadelphia 76ers on a nice little run of late. They're 44-22. They've won 4 straight, 7 of their last 10. Had that win last night. Obviously, they needed Joel to step up in the clutch and hit that game winner. They had to make a big comeback, but the way that they're playing at the moment, it looks like a team different to what we've seen before. I know we've said that before with this Philadelphia 76ers team a million times, because, you know, the process, you got to trust the process.
I was going to say that this is like episode 100 of you trying to convince me that the 76ers are ready to compete. So let's hear it.
Joel Embiid is ready to compete. Joel Embiid is primed for a playoff domination, a playoff run. That's the main feeling. We also have James Harden playing like the best version of James Harden to be alongside Joel Embiid. I'm not saying this is 35 point per game James Harden, but this is a James Harden who's averaging 22, 6, and 11 effectively, or 10.8 assists a game, shooting just below 40% from 3. Having that alongside the most dominant scorer in the league, that is a pretty good 1-2 punch to be having.
Yeah, and I'll start by being positive, because that's the right thing to do. I'm not going to start by being negative on you. So I always do that when you talk about the 76ers. But you are right about the offense in 2023. I mean, they've definitely turned over a new leaf. They've looked a lot smoother on that end of the floor. Second in offensive rating since the turn of the year. They're first in 3-point percentage, 6th in field goal percentage, moving the ball well. They're 8th in total assists. And yeah, I mean, look at just counting stats wise, they're having probably the best stretch ever between these two guys. And where are they at as a duo right now? Well, that's another really interesting positive. Just right now in 2023, they're better than Brown and Tatum, playing more efficiently, scoring better. Garland and Mitchell, better. Brunson and Randall, better. The only two that you might have argument about is Drew and Giannis. Giannis is on a just insane tear right now. And just, again, the Bucks are so good that you just don't talk about them because you just expect it. And Jokic and Murray, maybe you can have a conversation there. But Harden and Embiid right now are arguably they're the best duo in basketball offensively.
Had to get that point in there, didn't you?
I do, and that's the point. We can go all day right now about how good their offense is, and it has been. I think their spacing has been great. They've really cleaned up the spacing around Embiid. I think Embiid, as of late, has been moving the ball a little bit better out of doubles, and Harden has been attacking the paint a lot better. And he's just obviously one of the best playmakers in the league. We've seen that, and we know that. These are known things, though. And this is my thing, is we know how good they are offensively. Like, if they were struggling right now offensively, I wouldn't really think much of it because I'm like, okay, they're going to figure it out by the playoffs. My question about them has been and still is about the defense, and it's concerning to me that they started off first half of the season actually not bad. Like, they were technically the third best defense by defensive rating. I mean, and you can call them a top 5 defense. I think they look like that very often. But the concern was definitely the perimeter defense. You lose Matisse Thybulle, who was inconsistent in the lineup anyway. Right now, in 2023, defensive rating 118. That puts them at 20th. They're 20th in defensive rating, and the perimeter defense has looked as bad as ever. And my question is, and PJ Tucker even said it himself, like he talked pretty long about their defensive struggles. But my question to you is, are they going to be a top 4 team in the league, top 2 team in the East, if they are the 20th best defense, if their perimeter defense looks like this?
Well, at the same time, you put it that way, and obviously it's kind of been a bit of a swing. They've really found it on offense, and that's obviously they've maybe neglected their defense a little bit. But at the same time, for the entire year, they're still the 9th best defense in the league. So you have to think, if this is a question of swings, they could be in a position where they're ready to get it right back on point as you get towards the playoffs. I think the important thing you see from this team is they've gone behind in games, they've looked poor defensively, but they've also made big comebacks when in crucial moments they're capable of getting stops, as well as some of the top defenses in the NBA. And they've got the offensive power to be able to make the buckets when they need to make the buckets. And I think that's a more important thing, I think, to focus on for this 76ers team than possibly the slight slump in their defense. Maybe you look at it and think, if they're against a Milwaukee or a Boston, they're not going to be able to afford to go down that bit. They're not going to be able to afford to have those slacks in their defense. But I think the offensive matchup that they'll have against those teams will make it pretty tough for any team to stretch out ahead of them either.
Yeah, it's going to be a tough. It's going to be on. I feel like we're having this conversation over and over and over again because it comes down to Doc Rivers. But you look at their lineup data, like they have lineups out there that are good. Like they have very good. They're their best lineup right now. PJ Tucker, James Harden, Tobias Harris, Joel Embiid, Anthony Melton. A lineup that I think they'll rely on a lot in the playoffs. Defensive rating 112. I mean that's playoff level defense right there. Net rating of 7.6. They have plenty of lineups to their disposition there that have led to consistently good defense throughout the season, using Melton, using Tucker. We haven't seen enough from McDaniels, but he's going to be a guy that's going to be important for them defensively as well. I think one thing we will see, though, is that it's going to come down to Embiid in the post, and how can you deal with a double, and how is the spacing going to look if you have to throw out an extra defender out there, especially against a team like the Celtics. So I think it's a stretch to expect James Harden to get better defensively, but I think his maybe the lack of attention defensively from him and from Maxey, and even at times from Tobias Harris. That could just be like end of the regular season type of thing. So maybe it is a swing. Maybe they'll just swing back to focus in the playoffs, but not seeing that. And, hearing specifically from Tucker talking about lack of communication on defense, the lack of care on defense. You see it on the floor. You see the lack of effort. You don't see a whole lot of communication. When there's just an easy basket, like everyone just kind of turns around and walks. Nobody's talking. So stuff like that you don't love to see from a team that isn't at the point where they should not be caring about that. Like there should be. You don't see this from the Bucks. You don't see this from the Celtics. I mean, you don't even see this from like the Heat. Like the teams that are consistently good defensively, that's a mindset. It's not just something you turn off and on. And I do think that's still going to be the biggest question mark going into the playoffs, despite how good they've been, because they have been good. Like you got to give them credit. Like the shooting has been there. The synergy between Harden and Embiid is as good as it's ever been, and that's really encouraging. But we need to see the defense pick up as well.
Yeah, no, that's definitely a very good point. I think that if you think about it in almost in the entire league, you think that the 76ers should be the team that are playing with that biggest chip on their shoulder.
Yeah.
The whole thing with the process, Embiid obviously feels like he's never been healthy when they get to the playoffs. James Harden always has it leathered against him how he's never won a chip, how he hasn't delivered enough in the playoffs. PJ Tucker was meant to be the guy to come in and really get this defense clicking, and hasn't totally happened yet. Doc Rivers is a guy whose coaching greatness has been questioned. This 76ers team should be playing with that dog and then playing with that chip on their shoulder, and they need to start showing it. You're right. I'm loving what I'm seeing from them. They're the best part as a simple fan of basketball is the 76ers games are really fun to watch. Now it's a question of being able to deliver. They've got enough talent there, but do they have that dog in them? Do they have that determination on the defensive end to really dig in? And they're going to have to beat at least one, if not two, of the best teams that we've seen over the last couple of years if they are going to make a run to the Eastern Conference Finals or even the NBA Finals. So it's going to have to take a big swing, and for Embiid to remain healthy, Harden to remain doing what he's doing. They've got their spark plug in Maxey, who's still averaging 20 points per game on 40% shooting from three. Can the defense get back up to that level? Tobias Harris has to be playing top level defense, because if he's not doing that, why the hell is he still in Philadelphia, to be totally honest? But I definitely take your point. But yeah, 76ers got to have that chip on your shoulder. You really got to dig in now. This is a really key, important stretch now to the end of the season and starting the playoffs for them.
Yeah, I have a super hot take / question, because it just popped in my mind. If you were the 76ers, and given what we just talked about, like how great they've been offensively and how much better they need to get on the perimeter defensively, do you think that they would do a straight up trade, if they could, like in a made up universe, for Emmanuel Quickley, Tyrese Maxey, Emmanuel Quickley? If you just needed to switch those two guys for this playoff run.
No, I don't think so.
I think there's a conversation to be had. And okay, this isn't me like saying like Quickley is better than
the GOAT.
He's not better than Maxey. That's not what I'm saying at all here. Before anyone kills me. What I'm thinking about though, which is interesting, is that these two guys kind of had their rookie moments around the same time, and Maxey continued to get better, continued to get efficient, continued to really look smooth offensively. And Quickley has taken his time a little bit to get to that point. But the fascinating thing between these two players, and I think this is really interesting when you look at two very similar players and how they started out playing and their natural tendency and what they like to do on the floor. Quickley, though, became a very good defender. Like right now, it's shocking to me that we look at Quickley and if you watch him, like you're like, this is a good defender. This is a guy you put him on a playoff team like the 76ers would get a lot better defensively. Imagine putting him out there with Anthony Melton. That's a very formidable backcourt defensively. I bring it out because I just think it's cool. It's cool to see two guys who are very similar diverge a little bit here, and I think have different value for different reasons. Quickly, who's more of a he's an interesting thing. He's an interesting player for me right now because he's got that defensive badge now, and he's still got a little bit of that splashy shooter. Doesn't always have it every night like Tyrese might have, but he's a little bit more. He's a lot more consistent as a defender. So just thinking player value. Two guys that we compared that beginning of the season that would have been absolute no. Right now I'm thinking, they're a lot closer than I thought.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I still don't think it would be something that would happen, but
in real life, no, obviously not.
But the fact that it's a conversation now, and if you ask that question at the start of the season, I mean, you're stark raving mad. Like there's no way that's happening. But yeah, that shows the growth in IQ. It's great to see, and the fact that Maxey is still playing at such a high level, and it's great to see young guys who weren't the top prospects coming out of the draft really continuing to develop and showing they have a role on two teams that are winning in the NBA. But I think that's going to do it for today's episode. My thanks to Chris for joining me. It was a fun episode, some interesting conversations. Grizzlies Warriors, your rivalry, just accept it. 76ers, time to step up on the defense and make sure you guys put a playoff run together this year, because otherwise I might have to give up on the process myself. But again, thank you all so much for listening. It's been a pleasure. And most importantly, remember, take every shot and love every moment.
Peace.